Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the third episode of The Ways We Move. And today I have an exciting guest with me today, Clifford Cruz, who is a CEO of Skyway. My name is Nicholas. I am your host for today, and I'll let Cliff introduce himself. Cliff, how are you? Please introduce yourself for those people who might have been living under a rock and who haven't heard anything about Skyway.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm Clifford Cruz. For those of you who know me, CEO, founder of Skyway, and I currently reside in California. So for those of you who live on the northern side, it's quite chilly right now, right? At least of the day of this recording. Um, but yeah, that's who I am and who I work for.
Great, perfect. Well, thanks. And I call you Cliff. I don't know. I know you go by Clifford or Cliff. Is that all right to call you Cliff?
Yeah, either one sounds
Yeah,
good.
because I've been calling you Cliff, so it's just gonna
Yeah,
slip
it's
out
way
like that.
cooler. Yeah,
Yeah, it's way cooler. It's true. You don't hear that name anymore, that all that much anymore. So it is pretty cool to have.
yeah,
Hey,
very
Cliff.
nice.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get to the part about why did you start Skyway. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I grew up in Los Angeles, and moved up to Northern California sometime in 2014. And my career kind of started out in the technology space, doing various hardware projects for various companies. Um, and that led to me inventing some really cool stuff along the way. And then my career ended up in cybersecurity, and that I had been in that for well over a decade. And then from there, worked with a lot of government contracts and inventing various encryption systems and radio communication systems and various other kinds of enterprise software and military type of products. And so I established a really great career there. A lot of really great friends still follow me and still in tune with the whole industry. And I still get called constantly for different stuff in that industry.
Oh yeah.
And so it's awesome to kind of still have the following there. Um, but yeah, my career kind of led the cyber defense led me into the Bay Area, and uh, and and then kind of coming out of this hiatus in an exit, and I wanted to kind of explore different things that I wanted to do in my career because love cybersecurity and the challenges. I just kind of felt that for what I could do in life, there was something more that I could contribute that was grander. And a couple friends of ours got together and saw this industry and said, "Oh, I think this industry could use a little touch of the valley." And then we just we started the company and we are here today, right? And don't regret it. It's been quite a wild ride so far.
Yeah, it has been, as in any new industries, especially disruptive technologies, it's a wild rodeo ride. So was your background a little bit more on I know obviously cybersecurity is a huge topic. Everything, it's included in so many different sectors, so many different industries. Were you already working in aviation, or is this something that you just saw there was a need, we have to answer it?
So funny enough, how my life is. My I grew up in an aviation like family. So my family worked in air cargo and on well, not only on the government side, air cargo, but on the commercial side as well. And so I was always around very large aircraft as a kid, like DC-10s and stuff.
Oh, yes.
And then you know, that led me to doing junior pilot, training and stuff like that. And so there was a course in my life where aviation could have been an earlier career, but this was the dawn of technology, late 90s. And uh, that just really got me interested and it kind of became this like little hacker, if you will, right? In the day of, just having a great time on what on that whole part of the society that was growing, and that just led to me being in technology. But funny enough, it's come full circle. I'm kind of back now in the aviation, right? Like it's kind of like how these two roads have like kind of met, and it's cool. I'm all for it, you know.
Yeah, it's funny how life works, right? Sometimes you can chase, you can run away from it, but it'll come back to whatever you need to do and put your nose in it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so are you saying that you actually train to fly DC-10s? Because if I know
No,
anything about
no,
those
I
airplanes,
was a young pilot, like,
okay,
going
gotcha. Okay,
school, young,
yeah,
I it was like a Cessna that you
okay,
start out with,
gotcha.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
young pilot. I think Long Beach had this really great program for,
yes.
because that's where I flew out of, and as a junior pilot, and I remember my final landing test was Catalina. And those of you who have ever landed at Catalina is like
Oh,
the hardest, like for a junior,
oh
like hardest
yes.
place to land, right? But I did it, and that was awesome, and I had a great time, and it's core memory there.
Fantastic, because we lived 17 years in Long Beach, so I know the airport really well. I know Catalina very well, so that's a wonderful airport. But so much more to say about that. So tell us about Skyway. How did you come up? First of all, the obvious, the name, but what was the impetus? What made you want to do what you were doing with Skyway? How did you come up with a name, and what are you doing exactly when it comes to advanced air mobility, or AAM for short?
So this kind of all started out in early 2012 for me. I was working on a project, a cyber defense project at the time in Santa Monica, and at the time it was the upcoming Silicon Beach. I remember
That's
that
true.
whole
That's true.
group that
Google
got together.
offices. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I was a part of that whole thing, and off of like Santa Monica, and the Google and the IBM had just moved in, and Microsoft, and we were one of the top companies in the area. And so like, it was like, anyway, but there was a drone convention in LA, at the downtown LA, and I thought that was cool. And so I went over there, and a friend of mine was going to college at UCLA, and I saw these drones, and I was just like, oh, how cool is this? Like, I had no idea. Like, this was, I mean, I knew from the military side we had some stuff, but from a commercial side, I didn't know that it had
Yeah.
leaked over this much. And so um, that really started to dawn on me on what this was, and what, and a little detail on that. I actually called. I had a really great relationship with the city of LA, and I still do. And I called the police chief, and I said, "Hey, are you aware that this, and maybe we can use this, right?" And got the city involved in the early days and tried to figure out how this could all go. And I wanted to see if there was a spark, right? But
Mm,
it was really early. I mean, it was
yeah.
super early.
Yeah.
And I spent, maybe a few months trying to see if I could do it on the side to see if something would spark, but nothing sparked. And so I kind of just forgot about it, right? Honestly. And circle around into 2018, I thought to myself, what happened? Like, I saw this 10 years ago, almost. Like, why haven't we
Yep.
progressed in technology? We can do this fairly quickly. And again, whoever's been in the valley, you build fast, break, and deploy, right? And innovate. That's the model. And why hasn't that happened, right? And so looking back at the history of UAM or AAM, right, which is now it's called, um, we saw what happened. We saw where it kind of derailed, and the issues that were at hand, and the miscommunication across everything. It's just chaos, right? And so we're
Yes.
like, oh, perfect, right moment, right, to come on in, and to be a part of this, right? And let's do our skills. So I called up all my friends from all the way from like Motorola to all the cyber defense
Yeah.
companies, and
Yeah.
everybody who I knew, and an executive level, and I've built an entire team here at Skyway. If you look at everybody's background in my company, they all came from like
Yep.
large, like various aspects, and so people I worked for before, right? And we've done stellar projects in the past, and basically came together and said, let's do this, right? And so that's what Skyway was born, really around us, coming as as Patrick would say, disruptors in the industry.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you're right. You're highlighting two things that we'll talk about in other episodes. It's first of all, the curse of the futurist. I mean, people like you and me, we see something, we're like, holy moly, this is going to be great in 5, 10, 15 years from now. But sometimes it's not ready, or sometimes it's or the maturity of the technology isn't there yet. It's moving slowly and everything. But another important thing that we're going to talk about also later is what constitutes what's the secret recipe for a startup. And I think you guys have hit it pretty well, right down from being pretty quiet, just doing it, doing your press releases, but without a lot of fanfare, which is, one of the reasons why I was very attracted to what you guys were doing. And of course, everybody on board, really, they know what they're talking about. You know who they are. Well, we'll introduce them a little bit later and everything. If you want to, you can always do it right now. But tell us a little bit about what does Skyway does, and then for listeners out there, you might hear terms like urban air mobility or advanced air mobility. Just suffice it to say that when we started, it was called urban air mobility, and we only talked about eVTOLs. But then everything grew, and you can check the other podcast where I explained what AAM is. Now we call it AAM, Advanced Air Mobility. So that's the background story. So tell us a little bit about what does Skyway do it does exactly for AAM right now. What need are you answering out there?
So to step back on the reason why we created the company, right, to answer that question properly was what was the business case of advanced air mobility? And in any company or especially startup, you have to have a clear path to revenue, right?
Yeah.
Or at least a concept because you can pivot and grow. It's a startup, you have maybe a short amount of time to do that. But thesis, right? And in this case, uh, that's where we started out with, right? Understanding where the drone market was and the business mechanics that everybody was currently being funded at, right? Um, and and then it took us about a little while to figure out what that business was, and we actually have a really great relationship across the drone community from all of that work, right? And understanding where everybody's business models were, right? Now, it's not to say that the drone industry is going to have its challenges because it will, right? And we learned is that they run an entirely different set of rules, right? According to where the regulations are for the FAA are going, right? And what the con-op of NASA has drawn out for a lot of these type of businesses to flourish, right? And so it's working pretty well so far for them. And you know, and but for us as a business, we tried to understand where the challenges were, and obviously there was a lot of them, and there was nothing that we could do in the meantime to not only establish a viable business, right, but to also kind of play in the playing field. And so what we ended up doing was really understanding the gaps in the industry for advanced air mobility, not only technologically but business wise. And passenger eVTOL was one of those, right? And then we found our niche, right? We found where we are in this space and started to drive a lot of the technology towards those services, right? And so what originally started out as a technological discovery for drones turned into reshaping it more towards eVTOL operations, right? And slowly for that. And that has led to what Skyway is, right? Where we started to use those technologies that we've built to create an operations company, which is for vertiports, right? Specifically. And that is kind of our business model in a way, right? We are operating these facilities and doing contracts to build these out and deploy and turn on various destinations for airlines who have purchased or created operations for eVTOL aircraft, right? And part of Skyway is to keep innovating on what those technologies are, rather airfield technologies to airspace and scheduling and all of the things that go along with, the future of operating these things at large scale at a low altitude, which, mind you, if you
Ah,
understand aviation, airplanes are very, very far away from each other, very at a very high altitude, right?
yes,
But
yes,
when you're in the
yes.
lower parts, everyone's a little gonna be a little snug up to each other, right? A little closer. So that brings additional challenges, and those challenges could only really be solved by computers if you think about it, right? So in the future. So it's kind of like where we are as a company and where our decision, our focus is, right? And so far we've just been having really great past few years, in business, and we're super excited of all the operations coming in the coming years.
Yeah, you guys have done really well, and like I said, you've also done it very elegantly. You haven't inundated with us with as a journalist with press releases and a lot of brouhaha. So what is it that you guys are offering the AAM market right now? What is it exactly that you guys are bringing to the table?
Destinations. That's our goal, right? Is to um, establish routes, right? To get airlines destinations where they could start flying, right?
Mm.
And that's a lot of work. It's easier said than done, right? You're dealing with the state, the DOT, the
Yes,
local authority, you know, the community that doesn't want things in the sky, and and the FAA and everybody, right? It's hurt not. It's like, yeah, it's hurting cats, right? Essentially, yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah, I think the FAA has a really good saying. People they see noise much more than they hear it. If they see an airplane or a helicopter, it's very noisy, and you know what? That it's not even here yet. So
Yeah, I know,
unfortunately, you're
right?
right. Yep,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. So what does this look like? This landscape that you guys are painting for us when it comes to advanced air mobility? Can you give us a little bit of a glimpse?
Yeah, the thing about advanced air mobility is that is a lot of moving pieces to the puzzle. And I've mentioned this a few times to the industry, right? Is that it's a it has to be a collaborative approach of various technologies and services, and there when you it's not every person is going to be able to do everything all under the sun, right?
Yes.
There's no conglomerate right now in this space, right? And so maybe in the future there can be a conglomerate where somebody starts absorbing everything under the umbrella, but we're far away from something like that on a corporate scale. I think what there is a balance between competitiveness in emerging markets. I have
Yes.
a career in emerging markets. It's what I do, which is the reason why I'm here, right, in this industry, for those who don't know me. And is because this is what I do, right? I figure it out, I launch it, and I make a product and go. And but there's a balance of this, and there is still room for competitiveness in any space, right? But it's just understanding the playing field, right, before you
Mm.
start to go play the game. And in some cases, in certain industries, everyone understands that this is the case and gets together, understands the playing field, and then starts playing, right? And then in some cases, others don't want to play and they feel like they can, they feel invincible based on maybe, the capital they raised or the attention they're getting, right?
Yep.
And I fell victim to that at a young age too, right? I get
Of
it. Like I
course.
love, you're just like, oh, basking in the sun, right? And but unfortunately, that could end up leading to your own demise, right? And this is just business history, right? You look at this in various other
Yes.
industries that never were successful, and this is just how it goes, right? So I always caution um, that there is a balance between working with others. Obviously your IP is your IP, right?
Yep.
And there's a way to collaboratively do things together without having to compromise your position, right? And that always benefits you, benefits the industry, right? Benefits everyone, and then
Yep.
you're off and you're going. I think what's really interesting is that the NASA has done a really good job of bringing some people together on a neutral playing field. Most industries don't have a government doing that for them. So
It's true.
this is one of those things where it's kind of a plus side of this whole thing is that you have these vehicles to do that. Um, and uh, and obviously this has been very fundamental in people partnering together, such as all the partnerships that we've been doing, right? So um, you know, uh, I hope that answers your question. I don't know, I want to go keep on going, but yeah.
No, it does, and I think you make some really good points about the importance of right now. It's a nascent industry, right? We're writing the book basically. We're writing chapter one, and we are still all working together. Yeah, there are some standalone cowboys out there, and okay, well, that makes you scratch your head. And no matter how many times they say, "We'll do it alone," well, you just partnered with these guys. You just partnered with these guys. What do you mean? And by the way, you'll have to land on our vertiports at one point or another. We'll have to recharge. So we need to understand. You need to understand. We all need to work together. And like you said, go back the last 40 years and you'll see plenty of cases of plenty of companies that have tried to do it alone. Only a few actually make it through the end, but they make it more, not so much based on the technology, they really make it more on the business model that they adopt,
Yeah.
um, which will leave you to figure out, is that really a win or is that just a business savvy calculation, right? And that's not what we're about here. We're really about more about, offering this new way of moving around the planet and everything. So, I guess for people who might not fully understand what AAM is, what a vertiport is. So a vertiport, as we said, is where, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft will take off and land. Exactly. That's it. That's a big one. That's a vertihub right
This is
there.
a big one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a big one, guys. But we'll have smaller ones. So think of like a huge airport, a smaller secondary airport, and a small little grass field somewhere. And in terms of trains, a big train central, another train station where you have maybe two train lines that come together, and then that little station by itself alone, and that gives you an idea of the different types of vertiports. So is it safe to say that you guys are giving us the actual what we call ATM, air traffic management system, where, I know where this aircraft is going to take off. I know where it's going to go. I know where it's going to land. I know the roadmap, the path of that. Is that something that you guys would that be a good way to explain what Skyway is doing?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, when you mentioned vertiports, for those who don't know what it looks like for a small one, imagine if a giant airport and Starbucks had a baby. That's kind of what it would look like, what you feel like, and
Yep, exactly.
but Skyway is building a lot of those technologies. Yes, so we uh have started internally building out airspace tools to help guide aircraft into our facility, right? So just like an airport has technology that helps aircraft come and go, right? And assigns people to gates and all that stuff. We've automated a lot of those pieces and internally to run our facilities. We don't necessarily sell technology. We don't have something you buy and we give you. This is all internal tools, right? Because we're an operations company, right? Though there are tools and features through our APIs that go out to the airlines and the operators that they use to communicate with us and figure out what they want. And like there's a list of really cool features there that we're constantly innovating and working with OEMs and operators for their early operations and future operations and so forth, right? Um, so that's yes. So, a lot of the sky traffic, a lot of the ground traffic, parking and charging the aircraft and assigning gates and, billing and, all of that
Yes, yes,
jazz.
billing. That's important.
Cybersecurity is in there too, right? Like,
Yeah, of course. Of
so,
course.
yeah, we're a big thing on PPI. Like we were the ones who started to question a lot of the privacy side of things of data and the person coming
Yes.
into the vertiport and all the things like that we're working on. So it's a laundry list of things that are
Yes.
required to get this up and running, but uh, we've done a really good work. I mean, we've had a few years already under the belt, and honestly, from coming from a industry with tech industry, which and for those of you who are in tech, you know this, right? It's very hardcore, right? Your time,
Yes.
you have very, very short goals, very short time to do things, and that's just the nature of how money is and the expectations in the tech world. I think the lucky part about this being a tech company in aviation is that it moves so slowly that we have time to sit down, innovate, plan, and move forward, which I've never had in my life to do, right? Like, um,
Yeah.
normally it's like, okay, let's have a meeting next week. I'm like, wait, what? Next week? We're supposed to
Yes.
tomorrow. So it's a new thing for me to be like next week, type of thinking, but it's okay. I've gotten
You
used to
know,
it.
that's such a great point. And investors, please listen. This is aviation. You know, the golden rule is a decade, $1 billion, and 1,000 engineers, and that's just to get one airplane out of the door. So it takes time. And yeah, I guess the way that I look at it is, you guys are sort of like the oil behind the machine. You're the centralized. You're the way it's all going to operate. I'm not talking about operators, but the way it will function. The what's under the hood, I guess you could say. So we're coming on the end of this interview. I just wanted to ask you another simple question: is what in the world possesses you to not have a normal 9 to 5 job like everybody else, please? Why do you do this? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What is your motivation?
You know, as a kid, I always wanted to like change the world. It was like one of my things of wanting to like have an impact on the world somehow, some way. And that has always been the driver of me wanting to do something no one has ever done before. And if you look back at my history and those who know my history, that's always been kind of the case of everything that I've chased along the way. And and I've have successfully done that in a way, but not publicly, right? With some of the things I have invented. Um, but it's just kind of in me to do that. And sometimes I wonder like, oh geez, why do I have to pick some of the hardest things to like choose, right? Like I could choose like something else. But there's just so many things to do. That's the thing about where we are in society and human history right now is there is a lot of things that we need to do, right? And there's a lot of inventions still need to be done. And there's just so many problems technologically in the world that could use people that don't think that there is an abundance of people doing it. No, like if you have an idea and you have something to contribute to society, go for it, right?
Go
Like
for it.
there's
Yes.
nothing stopping you from doing it. And there's probably somebody not doing it, right? So,
Yep.
have at it. It's super fun and exciting to do, and that's what I'm all for. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said it well. We really are. It's not a cliche. It's true. We're witnessing a once in a lifetime revolution in the world of aviation, but it's much more than that. I think AAM is a sub part of aviation, which is itself part of this sort of convergence of mobility, out of lack of a better word. And that's what we're all trying to do here. And you guys are also not just doing the aviation side of things, but how do you link to the road infrastructure, which of course has to take into consideration everything, railway, maritime, everything. So we're moving into that direction. And you're right. Each one of us are, futurists. We sort of have an idea of where it's going, what needs to happen. Sometimes it's crazy, sometimes it's not that crazy. And then, after that, it's just a question of keeping at it every day. Well, that brings it to a wrap today for the ways we move. Thank you, Cliff. That was really interesting, and I can't wait to have you back on the podcast, because there are so many other things that we need to talk about. And so many, and plus, I think we'll have also a bunch of all of us talking together at one point to explain a little bit about what we're doing, some of the con-ops and the projects that we're doing. Lord knows we're doing a lot of things. But I wanted to thank you for being here today, for taking the time to be with us. And I want to leave it out for like a question for our listeners and our watchers. Is what did you think AAM meant before you came on this podcast? You started listening to this. What do you think it means to you, and what do you think needs to happen in order to, well, to make AAM a reality so that we're on our phone and we can go, hey, I want to go there right now. Take me there. I don't care what it takes. So thank you again for watching this. This is The Ways We Move. This is our third episode. Please like, subscribe, and share, and let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you think, and we'll be happy to invite Cliff again and his whole team. In the meantime, thank you.
Thank you.